I think the things that make a studio successful is, again, hustle, creativity. You don't need an education, you don't need money. And that's what most people don't want to give. They want to do it the easy way, and then they wonder why classes once full are now half empty. Right. New, improved, improving. If it can't keep getting better, then it's the same.
Welcome to this week's Escape Your Limits podcast. Today, we're speaking to the founder of a one-of-a-kind design and consultancy agency that is reimagining the fitness experience. From pole dancers to secret doors that conceal male strippers, she's breaking the mold with her award-winning and unforgettable boutique studios, gyms, and hospitality locations. Regardless of size, scale, or location, each unique project is an exceptional piece of architecture that leave no detail to chance. Today, she shares the sex appeal around her studios, which seductively entice people to return, how to avoid designing a studio for the owner, but instead through the eyes of the instructor, and how she builds community from the construction crew to the fitness team to ensure her projects succeed. So please enjoy this week's special with Barbara Chancey, owner and founder of the Barbara Chancey Design Group.
So here we are at MindBody Bold, and we're in the presence of greatness, aren't we?
Absolutely.
I think you interviewed a few years ago, I
Yes,
think.
in the pandemic.
We have Barbara Chancey, who is from Barbara Chancey Design Group, and there is just a wake of brilliance around the planet at that very high level, because you create unforgettable, amazing, beautiful fitness transformational spaces that come from a place that I think, we've both talked about it, from truly outside the box, things that do not exist now, you bring into creation. So we're hoping you can share some of that insight with us.
I think we've tried to elevate the benchmark in fitness design through the eyes of the instructors. And that's where it all started. You know, this is not about me, but I was teaching spinning, the original Mad Dog, in the early 90s, and yoga at a gym that was designed by an architect, and it didn't meet the needs, and I was so frustrated. And so I made a deal with the owner. I said, look, this is how you get your way. I said, I'll make a deal with you. If you just let me redesign this studio, you don't have to pay a dime, and if your membership doesn't double in a year, I won't turn in my receipts. It's a win-win, right? So suddenly, nights and weekends, I was working all night. We transformed it completely, and this was in 1992. This was probably the first studio.
We remember.
Do you remember? You were there.
We were there.
Most of the people were in diapers then, but nonetheless, 20 bikes went to 40, 40 went to 60, and for 10 years, there was not an empty seat. And that's momentum. So yes, you can design it, you can buy the equipment. We had people riding broken bikes just to be in the presence. A stage where we could have 6 instructors if we wanted to, so it wasn't just about me. But nonetheless, so I took that concept and I started knocking on doors, because I also taught yoga, and I realized that there was a respect in yoga. Nobody leaves, nobody comes in, but the architects back in the day, there's a mirror, right, and a glass, and everybody waves, like it was just ridiculous. So I knocked on doors very quietly, and of course people laughed and said, boutiques are a fad, who would ever want that? Why would you want to ride a bike in the dark? And so I realized that they didn't understand. And so everything that I do moving forward is through the eyes of instructors, because they're the ones, as you know that, they're the heart and soul. And if instructors are happy, you're very happy. If they're not happy, they call me and they open against you. And so everything that we do, in fact, I would say 90% of the phone calls that I get are from instructors who are so frustrated because whoever designed their space or whoever owns it never taught a class. And like, if you've never had the joy of a playlist, how can you possibly design like a restaurant? The first thing we want to know is the menu, and then we can design the kitchen. And so we go in from a different approach, and we also believe that instructors can do much more than put a few batteries in a mic pack. So we provide creativity. Creativity cannot be purchased. It cannot be stolen. You can't look at it on Pinterest. It comes here. And so we design spaces for the next 10 years. Anything new triggers momentum, but it won't sustain momentum. A new studio, a new gym is great for maybe a year or two. And then 10 years, where are they? And in that original story I told you, 10 years later, we did not have an empty seat. And there's more to that than the exercise. Fitness is between the ears, not below the neck. And so because of the creativity, we add things to the walls for the future. You may not know we may not need it now, but things continually improve. It's new today, it's improving. So every time you come back, you're like, how can it possibly get better? So value and price are two different things. If you're charging $20 for a class, if it doesn't have value, they're not gonna come for free. If you're charging $20 for a class and it's amazing, I'd be willing to pay $40. $20 is a deal. You see the difference? And so little thoughtful features. So when we start designing these, usually on the left-hand side, we're talking about what do you believe, you understand, we can go into that later. Are you inspirational, competitive, rebellious? We design the space to hold what you believe. Everyone believes something different. And so once we understand what you believe and write it down, then we start looking for the space and then magically it comes together. But, you know, little tricks, little tips. There's an element of surprise. Anything that you use too much, you've lost their attention. If it's not enough, you've lost them. There's that little fine spot. You've got to tease them.
How do you get that out then?
Oh. Well, so I'll give you an example of a studio we did in Dallas 12 years ago called the Wright House. And sadly, they lost the lease. Trader Joe's, I think, has a parking lot now or something. It had nothing to do with COVID. So anyway, but this was one of the first examples. So when the movie 50 Shades of Grey came out,
Never heard of it.
You ever heard of that one? We did 50 Shades of Green, and I was honored to work with the owner of that. He was one of the original rhythm instructors when Reebok certified in '92. That was way, way back, so long, long ago. But nonetheless, 5 songs into the class, lights go down, and little things like what you believe. Do you believe that if you open the door, the light comes in? As an instructor, you lose the confidence. Think about Broadway. Once the doors close, the actor's on stage. So we design secret panels that move. So if somebody wants to slip in, it never bothers the instructor because you're so focused on that. You've got them in the palm of your hand, right? And the minute the light comes in. So nonetheless, 50 Shades of Green, 5 songs into the class, lights go down. A male stripper slips in.
Of course they do, exactly
Of course they do. Of course they do. Lights come up green, and nobody said a word. That was the beauty of it. Nobody knew it. He weaves his way through. Now, we believe that, we'll just talk about cycling for now. We believe that if the instructor should help someone on the third row if they come unclipped. Not everybody believes that. Certain brands pack the bikes in because they don't want their instructor getting off the podium. But we did at the Wright House, that's their job. So we put an extra 18 inches between the second and third row. Meanwhile, he can weave his way through, dropping articles of clothes. Went out the side door, never to be seen again. I'd pay $40 for that. I'm just saying.
I paid a lot more for that.
I'd pay a lot more for that. I want another class. But if you do it too much, and so the whole point was that like it never happened. Right. That's when people go and talk. Right. They don't talk about, I got this many miles I burned. Nobody cares. Life is hard. Don't make me win my class. So whether it's no matter what the element is, there's a creativity. So the instructors just keep getting better and better and better, and they're like, I've got a surprise for you. Salt Lake City, we did. It was actually Centerville. It was called Cure. We like to name them. We brand them. I'm a control freak, but it's like thousands of pieces, and so everything comes together. But Cure with a Q, be better humans. And so again, it was a boxing kind of a hit concept. 10 songs into this, a drum corps just marches in, and you're just boxing with the drums, and it's like, this is like tribal. It's overwhelming. That's what people talk about. And so we design spaces so that allows, that's able to happen. If you just, want to sketch something off, that's great, but think about a yoga studio, one of my favorite. Drives me nuts. If you're lying there in Shavasana, and by the way, everyone on my team, we go in undercover. Right. We take classes undercover.
Secret shop, yep.
We're doing a huge project in Montreal. It started in 2016 from the ground up. It opens in about 4 months. It'll be the first solar village in Quebec, but they wanted a spray tan, so I sent all my guys to get spray tan. we have to understand the ventilation and what it's about. So nonetheless, we're in there in this yoga studio, we're in Shavasana, and we hear the teacher going out to get the chill towel. Clump, clump, clump. And I'm like, the captain does not leave the ship. That's 30 seconds. You could have changed my life. And instead, I hear you. We put in a two-way refrigerator. The janitor loads it from the back. Never leave the class. But if you don't understand at the beginning, if that's not what you believe, if you want the teacher to go out, we all hear you talking and whispering. When it comes to wellness and massage, you know, you're in this space. The ceiling is just as important. And so every single detail is through the person that uses it. And most fitness architects don't teach classes. Most equipment salesmen don't make a playlist. Mm-hmm. And that's the difference, is that we're in the trenches. We get our hands dirty, you know, and that's, I think, the difference of why we design with a little different approach.
So there's a little bit more to that. I mean, you're incredibly creative, and we can just hear the way that you approach it. So you're walking in the moccasins, you're getting that. But there is also such an enormous skill set that sits behind building what we don't know we need yet, or want is perhaps a better word. So I feel like you're stepping into the emotions, you're getting rid of the hygiene. It's like there's hygiene factors, and most people are getting those wrong, you know, like the clumping and the door and the light, and these are just obvious things. What background have you got to be able to meet the needs of the creative ask once you and your team have gone in and gone, we're going to fix that, that's not quite right, I don't feel this. Like, what technical training have you got? Obviously you've got a big design background, but you're thinking about things differently.
They say it takes 10 years to be an overnight sensation, right? Yeah. 10 years of trying out what doesn't work.
Right.
And relentless. You know, in the beginning, I was giving away, I was bartering, let me do this, U.S. Army, anything, let me help you. And I learned what works. And what I also realized is that, just like lighting and sound, if you don't know why you need lighting, don't waste your money on it.
Right.
And so a lot of people think, oh, I'm failing if I just had this. And I go back to Soul Cycle again. You know, they don't need all this lighting because they just need two candles as part of their class. I will honor you. And so you have to understand, why do you need this before you invest the money in it.
Thank you for supporting the Escape Your Limits podcast. If you're thinking about creating a unique and engaging fitness space to take your fitness to the next level, then we have you covered. Escape Fitness design and manufacture some of the most innovative, attractive, and durable functional training and free weight equipment used by many of the best trainers and fitness brands across the globe. As a valued listener, we are offering you a 10% discount off many of the products on our website. You can check out the full range by going to escapefitness.com and use the code DUMBBELL. That's escapefitness.com using the code DUMBBELL. That's it from me. Please enjoy the rest of this interview.
So you've gone in and you've seen the need and you're like, oh, we could make this so much better. Oh, yeah. But then you're actually having to pull on technical skills of how you can make that happen logistically. So yes, there's design, like the two-way fridge, very simple example, but not everyone's going to get to that conclusion. So you actually made that leap and then created that thing. You're doing ventilation. You're questioning whether or not you need all the lighting, or the ventilation, or the colours, or 3 levels. You're asking all those questions based on the beliefs of the people. So I'm just wondering how you match your skill set with the need.
I can tell you that the myth of the studio owner is that I have experience in one area, so I must understand another. Mm-hmm. Our most successful clients say, teach me everything. Mm-hmm. So for example, to answer your question, we don't advertise. Mm-hmm. All right, we're just very difficult to find. I'll get once in a while a request on my website, a phone call, and it's the personality and the connection comes first. If it's someone who says, I've got 6 gyms, I own them, I've been in fitness all my life, I work in School of Business, that's not who we want to work with. Mm-hmm. We start from the beginning as startups. We teach you everything. We even teach you construction terms so that you can go in. We help with financing. We prepare you so that you can walk in and present yourself with knowledge. And so everything from pitch decks, and we do a lot of donation services, mm-hmm. you know. We just kind of make up the prices depending on what the person is going to do with the studio. Mm-hmm. A lot of it is philanthropy based. Mm-hmm. We're helping a couple of kids right now in South Georgia, and absolutely we'll help you. You know, but the point is to start at the very, very beginning and help them understand what they're getting into. They have the passion, they're the trailblazers. They don't want to be a franchise, and those are two different personalities. They live or die by their own intuition, and they don't blame people. But we hold their hand every step of the way. And so we start getting to understand, for example, naming them. Usually I like to name or at least help them. If people are not wearing your shirts in your retail, if you're not making a substantial amount off of that, it's a really bad brand, and it's a logo that nobody likes.
But you told me when we met, we'd had a sort of a conversation about a year ago about T-shirts, and I remember writing it down. You was like, "Look, people don't care about your brand; they're interested in a statement."
Absolutely.
So just
Well,
explain
you go
that.
back to Nike, you know, it's just do
Just
it. Nobody really cares about that. And so what happens is people get fixated on a name. And I have a pretty strong marketing background, okay? So I dip into that a little bit. But it's more about who you are and what you believe. Your brand is not what you do or sell. Your brand is here. And so normally what we like to do is start taking concepts. For example, Shine Cycle in Brunei. That's a good example. I got a random request for information, Abel, Kaya, I had no idea. I intentionally will never Google anybody. I will never research who sends a request. I don't want to know about you. I just want to hear your story, and we don't do FaceTime. I want to hear. Sometimes when you are looking at someone, they're not always completely honest. So we just schedule a call, and in the case of Brunei, wonderful conversation. That was the end of it. I'm here if you need me. If not, I don't follow up. They're big boys and girls.
I love it.
I mean, you know, if you want me, I'm here. And so about 6 weeks later, I got another email that said, "Hey, I'd like for you to talk to my business partner, Bahar Jeffrey." And at that time, I thought, I need to find Bahar Jeffrey. When I realized that this was the Princess of Brunei, and I wrote her back and said, "Girl, you didn't tell me you're the princess." Like,
Yeah,
come
you didn't
on.
ask and you didn't
know.
Google
It's
and
like,
you
come
didn't.
on. And so because of that, you know, we changed her name and we kept everything very quiet. The world had no idea what we were doing behind the scenes. But I asked Azima, I said, "Tell me what you believe. What are some things about people that you believe?" And I'll never forget, she said, "I believe everyone has a little light inside of them. And sometimes it's a flicker, sometimes." So I started writing and I started researching, and at that moment, Shine Cycle was born. Shine, and so Art Deco. Now, everything glowed. We powder coated the bikes gold, and so it's a hits concept as well. Very, very Art Deco and just gorgeous. And one nice thing is that the gold powder coated bike moves around so that no one ever knows who's on it, like the Golden Egg. And of course, we change the number, so when you book a class and they get a prize, it could be a massage, but every class, the bike moves. That's fun, but that came from getting to know the relationship of the client. In the case of Turn in Atlanta, that was one of my favorites. We found the location and helped them. Turn is part of the word nocturnal. 4 times a year when the seasons turn, the bikes, the kettlebells, the yoga mats go outdoors at midnight for nocturnal charity. So suddenly, sweat gold and the studio design, walnut, black, it came to life just based on what you believe. Does that make sense? I put studios in categories. They're inspirational, competitive, rebellious. They usually go into one of those. And when there's conflict, that is one step closer to failure. The minute there's contradiction, the minute something does not work, and contradiction can be in vocabulary. So we even manage the words that come out of your mouth at the front desk. 10 words you'll always say, 5 words you'll never say. I've had clients call me to say, "I'm going to open a studio because if she calls me doctor one more time, judgment. We're judgment free, you know, we love everyone, but we're going to judge your age and we're going to judge your status." And it's fascinating. It's not a Southern thing. It's not Dr. Sir, ma'am, miss. It's just a judgment of age. And I always laugh and say, Madonna is not a ma'am, you know. But why would a 20-year-old, and so this goes to the front desk. The reason I'm telling you this is that when people stop leaving your class, they're not going to tell you why. They just don't like something. It has usually nothing to do with the fitness. It's everything out. And so it's usually at the front desk is when the problems happen. There's conflict. And so we hammer out those words that will be said, words that your competitors use, Why would you use the same words to describe how different you are? If I hear state of the art one more time, it's like, why are you starting? I don't know. And so we have a lot of writers that help me as well, and we try to use fewer words that are very succinct. An audacious sound system, you've got my attention. State of the art, everybody's state of the art. It doesn't mean anything. So when we hear things that have been used over and over again, that's a sign that you won't last.
Is there like a philosophy? Like, I'm trying to sort of piece together, like the way you think about things is very different, which I guess is kind of what you then share to your clients. But is there a sort of like a philosophy that guides how you think about things for your clients, or is it? I guess is that just your personality coming out? And
the philosophy is every day is grand opening. The minute you start letting things slip, that's the minute. I wrote a blog piece on 7 signs for studio failure, and I see these, and this was just from experience. Every day is grand opening. And so whatever you want to decide you're going to be, for example, chilled towels, all right, I always like to use that one. Sometimes we pass them out, sometimes we don't. It's not an option, you either do or you don't. Sometimes the fans come on, sometimes they don't. So what we like to do is sort out what in the world do you believe, and then hire people that believe that. When you hire people that believe what you believe, you'll never fail. But the minute there's contradiction, and I can use Soul and Fly a little bit. Now that Fly's not there, Ruth, they believe 2 different things. And when you have 2 different religions, it's very religious. And that's like religious architecture. A mosque, a Baptist church, it doesn't matter, a synagogue. You have different architecture, and so we design for the religion that you believe. We build a vessel to hold what you believe. And that's why every one of our designs is different. There's no cookie cutter involved in that because everyone has a different belief.
How big is your team? It sounds like the secret society is everywhere.
I'm like a drug dealer, like this is my team.
Yeah.
I just have been around enough, we make phone calls. And so usually what happens is I have a very talented team, and we work together for projects that we think will inspire that corner of the world. And we price it based on how much babysitting we have to do.
what's success? When you're doing a project, how do you personally judge your success in a project?
Oh, well, these are my children, you know. I'm like Jane Fonda. I'm in the 3rd act. The curtain's going down, and so I feel this restlessness of every day. I've got to leave for the next generation all those dreams that we had, and you've taught before. And if you've never taught, you can't really share that with anyone. It's inside of you, and so I think the success is to again look back at. I don't know that we had any close through COVID. We had one that lost the lease, and we've had one that closed maybe 4 or 5 years ago. It was a death in the family. But our guys are the most successful. In fact, Ride Cayman, they reported their strongest year ever last year, 5 years. And so, they're children. And what's nice about my family of studios, this is another reason we don't fail. As an independent, you're out there alone. You open, nobody cares. You close, nobody cares, because you don't have colleagues. And so when all of the studios kind of believe, kind of this faith, if you will, that I start them off with in my team, then suddenly they network. So as again, Nigeria will be going to Brunei. Seattle is training Montreal. Austin is training Tampa. And so because they know our team. And so what happens then, you can send guest instructors because you can't just keep promoting Susie's teaching again. Like, I know she's always teaching, but if you bring someone in, we did a studio in Doha, Qatar, and they trained in Dallas. And suddenly you've got friends all over the world. And so as an independent, you're not a franchise. And if you have problems 4 years down the road, call Triumph in Fort Wayne, Indiana, crushing it. And so suddenly they're like, oh yeah, Barbara, oh yeah, you know Doug, you know Daryl. So my inner little circle, our little sanctum, it feels like family. And that way, we take off the training wheels. I told them my goal is to never call me again, unless you want to open another one. But hopefully I've trained you well enough that you can do it without me. I don't want anything, no residual, just like do the best you can. And just, send me an invitation to your 5-year anniversary. And most of them are going on 5 to 10 years now. Small areas, Redding, California, it's a tiny little community. They're 9 years strong. And so that's the joy, is to look at these little seeds that are planted. And I said my heroes are the clients.
So you were saying there was some research about group cycling, to this yesterday, that it was like declining, and then Barbara, you were saying like it's not that it should be, it's just that it's not a great experience. Is that one? Is you're right? Is it generally declining as a category?
Yeah, there was some stats, and again, the caveat around that is it's early days. Data's, we're in unusual times, so it's a little bit about that. But in the general, in terms of bookings and coming back to class, like just in the general fitness.
I think you have to be very cautious where data comes from.
Yeah.
Our guys are busy making money, and they don't fill out surveys. Just saying, where is this coming from?
Well, this came from the conference, so this was from data that came from MindBody,
I think some of and that's probably true, but we get about 200 requests a year, without advertising, it could be an hour of consulting, can you do this? Now, obviously, turnkey is the way we like to go, but we'll help anybody. And the surge of requests for indoor cycling is on fire. So suddenly we're doing a lot of Legree, and I think Sebastian's here. I need to say hello to him. We have our guys are actually installing right now in Portland, our first color therapy Legree studio. So we'll be practicing in a white box.
What's Legree?
Legree is kind of like a Pilates on steroids. It's
steroids,
Sebastian Legree's Megaformer. Yeah. But nonetheless, it will be the first color therapy to prevent some of the sadness from gloomy gray skies. And so early morning sunrise will be in a box of oranges and yellows. And there's a little bit of science that's saying that that's kind of special. But nonetheless, we're seeing a surge in some of the Legree studios. They have a small footprint. You don't need much space for them. But indoor cycling is on fire. And we're really excited that we will be, I can't share too much right now, but we will be launching our first indoor cycling for patients with ALS. And so in my mind, that's a crying need because, again, fitness is through the years, but to be able to have ALS patients come and actually take a class and to be with a group. And so we see alternative athletes and Parkinson's, and there's so much data there. We're seeing an increase indoor cycling in senior care homes. I mean, who wouldn't want mom to be in the Frank Sinatra ride? It's just, I had the privilege of working with President Carter many years ago. It's not a political thing, but I just got a call to put a studio in Plains for him. And I remember, of course, I don't care who he is, so I got him a bike, but I made a playlist. And I said 3 songs a day. And here we are under the presidential seal, and he's got Willie Nelson, Georgia on his mind, and he's just, tears are streaming down his face. And he said, no one ever brought me music. And that solidified that there is a need, just 15 minutes of mobility, but it's the music. And so we're seeing a lot of shift. And so we go into areas that most people ignore. How many studios do you see for alternative athletes? How many do you see for senior care? So we go where others don't. Just like when I started this, everyone laughed at me. I knocked on the doors of our gym architects and said, let me help you. And they're like, it's a fad. And, I went to all the big names, and of course they laughed. And so I was kind of the misfit. And so I reach out to the misfits. And that's where I think that most people ignore. And I've often said, fitness is not for 40 and under. And also, you never put an age on someone, right? But we do find that there is a significant shift. And most people think, my target demographic is 30. I'm like, no, they're on their mother's credit card. It's not 30. There's a different population that needs to be served. But a healthy studio has all ages. We have instructors who are 60. We have instructors who are 12. A healthy studio is not, we all look alike, talk alike, think alike. And that's what I think is missing in some of the bigger box cycling programs. They think it's the bike. And you know this. You can be in a cardboard box on a pogo stick and they will line up if this is fed.
Are there any other things outside of cycling that you see work to kind of tap into the people who probably would be turned off to go into a typical gym or studio?
Other than cycling? you
Yeah,
mean, like-
yeah. Are there other things that you feel will work, or is it cycling? You know, like a real, you know, is that like a successful thing for what you're
No,
doing?
we do, pretty much anything and everything. We did a boxing studio in Malaysia that recently opened, and that was phenomenal. So we're seeing a lot of combination of kind of the hit concepts, which I know you'll like with Escape, but we're doing some of those, and it's all usually instructor driven. And so a lot of times people will call and say, I don't know what to put in, I've got this space. And I'm like, well, let's find out. You're only as good as your worst instructor's worst playlist. So let's find an instructor, and if they're good, so don't build something and then hire people, find people and say, what do you want? And that's one of the things, in the beginning we talked about, I like to design for the next 10 years. If you think you might want to do slam balls one day, I need to know that. We're going to put blocking here. It may not be today. If you think you're going to add bar, maybe, there's blocking in the walls.
Yeah, reinforce, yeah.
So we try to design for the future. Outlets up in the ceiling, absolutely. We're going to put a snow machine. So in July, you better believe there's snow coming down. So you just never know, but it's usually for the future, for what instructor can bring their following. And that's what most people don't get. They build it and they will come. That does not work. It's find them and what do you want, and we customize it. And so that's what we're seeing, is that just combination. We also design, for example, we call them Studio Bs, right? And that can be anything and everything. But Studio B is like a Rubik's Cube. We can pull out random walls that move. So if it's a yoga class, you don't want to see kettlebells and TRX. It needs to be specific for that. If it's a cardio dance, it can be the same studio because the flooring is the same with a sprung floor. At Turn in Atlanta that I mentioned, they have a Studio B. That was great. It's a mezzanine. And when Beyonce's backup singers come to do a 6-week session, I'm going to sign up. But if your studio doesn't have the flooring for that, you can't do that on a rubber floor. So we like to think, what could you possibly use the space for when the right instructor comes? And also, talented instructors, if you don't have a space for them, they'll go somewhere else. So
That's what they were saying earlier. The guy from MindBody was saying one of the biggest challenges a lot of their clients have is just staff problems. They can't get them.
Well, and we dip into that. So it takes, some of our studios, again, can take up to 6 years to build and to launch. So what we're doing behind the scenes, we bring in articulation coaches, we bring in drama coaches, we bring in music mixing. Anything that looks easy takes a very long time. So again, going back to Broadway, of course, I can sing and dance, really? Let's see you do this. And so what happens is people see an instructor and think, oh, it's easy. And it only lasts for a short period of time because it's much more difficult. And so what we like to do is, I mentioned my family of studios, so we'll take a core group, maybe let's just say it's a new studio opening in, I don't know, Pennsylvania somewhere. We will take 3 or 4 of their could-be instructors, and we will send them off to weekends at previous clients, where they will learn and train and understand with someone who's been successful for 8 years. So I think the commanding the room and the music skills and just understanding how to multitask. You see someone on the 3rd row, you're coming in clipped, I've got the beats going, the lights are going on, what do I do? You're perfectly prepared for that. And usually what happens before we launch a studio, my whole team comes, and we prepare them for when things don't go well. When things work, everyone's good. So what we do is, guess what, team? You've got a class in 30 minutes and you just had a power outage, fix it. And a good instructor doesn't need music. If you can't teach without music, then you need to go back and what do you have to say? And so a lot of times in the auditions, it doesn't matter what it is, the sound goes out and you have to finish the next 10 minutes with verbal skills. We do a lot of articulation as far as using words that are not parroted or 4, 3, 2, 1, I'm not paying for math class. I need more than counting. And so rich vocabulary with 3 and 4 syllable words. So that's value, right? And suddenly it's transforming. I'm going to name my class today. It's Truth or Dare. Have a plan. You didn't just put 10 songs in your car on Spotify. There's no value to that. And so that's the layering and layering that we do. My lighting guy, I have to say, he's not my lighting guy, but he works exclusively with our clients. Daryl Vaughn, Pink Floyd, Rolling Stones, he did the Live Aid concert. He comes from a rock and roll background. Now, the reason I'm telling you this is the show goes on. I don't care if the amps go out, the show goes on. And so what we like to do is we set them up to fail. So whether it's boxing, yoga, it doesn't matter what it is, guess what? The lights just went out, or someone fell off their bike, or someone got hit in the head. I've seen 2 fist fights, 3 heart attacks, gunshot, true story, fights, you can only imagine. One of the things that we like to do also is to, first and foremost, I protect the client from a lawsuit. Whatever you're teaching, there is a buzzer to 911 in everything that we do. So all the thought that we put into it comes from years and years, and it's thoughtful features so that there's no change orders once the construction starts. The full set of plans, the branding, the colors, everything. So if I die tomorrow, you can open up 6 more studios, and you have the tools. The branding assets, they're just like, it's like branding porn, you know, you're just like, oh, 39 pages of just beautiful backgrounds, and we're very selective about who we use for that. We've got some great graphic people on board, but so just like the buzzer to the front desk, there was a studio that we did in San Diego, Pure, and they've been around, so successful. The front desk during the class, I think the girl left to, I don't know, go wash her hands or something, and a couple of homeless dudes came in, certainly fine, but they heard the music, and they opened up the door, so you're teaching, and all of a sudden, you've got a couple of shopping carts, you know, what do? You know, we've already practiced for that. We've already prepared for that. You just keep teaching, and the buzzer presses, and then it's handled. So we prepare them for when mock classes, you know, whether it's yoga or anything, suddenly I just had a heart attack. What are you going to do? So when you're anticipating failure, as he said, when things work, you're great. But let's see how good you are when they don't work. And that's the beauty of the performance that comes out.
So you don't know whether it's a stripper or a homeless person.
Or a heart attack, yes, stripper or a heart attack.
Is
What's
this
it going to
real?
be today?
Well, and Shine, this is a great story. So for Shine, again, Brunei. Now, granted, it's not for everyone, but Mother's Day. What are you going to do for Mother's Day? So they flew in Stevie Wonder's saxophone player. Gets better. 5 songs into the class. It was a hit class. No announcement. No one had any idea. The lights go down, and he plays Isn't She Lovely? Slips out. I'd pay $40 for that. You see where I'm going? And that's what most people don't have. All you need to be successful is hustle and creativity and us. No, I'm just teasing. But that's what most people don't have.
And does that, do those things from a commercial perspective, you know, like making, because there's a huge amount of work to get to that level and so many pieces. Does that work commercially, like flying this guy over, and do you get either the word of the mouth or the retention for that to kind of elevate your business, you know, from a, you know, to sustain a business?
Well, not really. As again, we're very secretive. And what's funny is my website, if you go there, it's just a tip of the iceberg because clients are paying me to keep their secret secret. And so it's not about us. We have no ego. Everyone on the team, we're in kind of that 3rd phase of life. It's not about us. We call ourselves balcony people. We're just up there clapping for you. And so because of that, we don't talk much. We don't post much. We don't share much. Everything is very quiet. And as I said, that's how it should be.
But for the client, so like if for their businesses, you know, to do some of these things and go to that effort to, you know, for a single studio, I know you say that they're going for 10 years, so I guess it must work for them, but...
And it is Brunei, darling.
Yeah.
No, but you'd be surprised. As I said, we did one in Triumph in Fort Wayne, and we had breakdancers that came in. You know, it's just something fun. But I give them. I mean, I'm the taskmaster. So the minute you sign a contract, you've got homework. You've got to read these 6 books. You've got to watch this DVD, and you've got to tell me by Tuesday what your answer is. And that tells me, is this a hobby? hobby or a business? If it's a hobby, then that's fine. It's a playhouse. If it's a business, you treat it like a business. For example, and you'll appreciate this, I'm just respect the history. If you're opening a coffee shop, you understand the beans. Costa Rica, where are the Jamaican beans? You really understand. It's not that you just like lattes. If you're opening fitness, you don't even know the history. And I think we talked about on the podcast one time, with the very first fitness business, does anyone have any idea when it opened? You're in fitness and you don't know the founder of fitness? How can you possibly claim to know? 1929, Charles Atlas during the Great Depression. People are jumping out of buildings because they've lost their fortunes, and he opens the first fitness business. When the economy tanks, fitness goes up. That brought self-esteem when you can't travel, and so people need to tap into that. Just like the history, of Bikram, of understand the difference. Spinning is so funny. I'll get a call. I'm going to open a spin studio. I'm like, you don't know anything. I'm just teasing. But understand, respect Mad Dog. It doesn't matter if you agree with them, but respect them. If you're Canadian, you can use the word spin because it's not trademarked there. But at least know, because contradiction means somebody's wrong. So if you call it this, I call it that, functional training, CrossFit, I don't know what it is. I just want to open it. It's shallow. And so we really take it to a level. And the yoga community is very good about this. Tadasana, Chaturanga, Sanskrit, it doesn't matter. They don't make up things. 200 RYT, 500, but when it comes to all this other stuff, it's my signature class. I'm like,
No.
where did this come from? And what happens is it's my way or your way and contradiction. So in the beginning, what we like to do is write down our, again, vocabulary. How are you teaching? And hire people that will teach like that. And if they don't want to teach like that, they need to go elsewhere. So we start small and strong and solid. This is who we are. This is what we believe. This is why our studio is designed this way. Every single detail, just like the space between the benches, it doesn't matter. We're super sensitive to people that may not fit the perfect mold. We know that sometimes on the back row is where first-timers or heavier people, or if you have a prosthetic, or if there's something, sometimes the back row, a little more space between whatever you're doing. Think about business class. The seats are big and you don't feel so large. But when you pack things in, you're acutely aware that I don't belong. We make everyone feel 10 years younger. Fitness and sex are a lot alike. You're going to appreciate that. Get your ears perked up. But
In what way?
in what way? Because you're paying to feel good, and you're paying to feel young. So if you're 70ish, you want to feel like you're 16. Everyone wants to feel like they're 16, and that comes by lighting. And so we make it's like a restaurant. You want to feel beautiful. I can read the menu. You should never have to get your reading glasses out to look at your locker. And so we've had some instructors suddenly are saying, I can't see. I'm 45. I need my reading. I've lost my vibe. So we think about that. So we have a touch keypad system so that you can be blind and still teach a class. But what happens is you're acutely aware that I'm the oldest one in this class, and you're acutely aware that
You don't want to be known to be the oldest person, or seen, or
Singled out.
So that comes again at a restaurant. The people who are older are going to spend more money if they feel younger. So lighting, I can read the menu, I feel comfortable, I can hear, the music's good, so the acoustics, everything goes into that effect of I walk in the door and I feel good. So whether it's backlit or very soft, we're so sensitive to even mirrors. What we hate more than anything is to be in let's just say yoga studio, and suddenly there's a mirror split, or Pilates or bar, and like, why is this mat split? Half my body's here because whoever designed that didn't take the class. So we like to know, what are you going to do? We position it out. We know your equipment, every single thing. We know the circumference around that. And then we position the mirror so that every single station has the same. You don't ever want to lie on your back and have an air vent and squinting, and suddenly this one is never filled.
So is that one of your guiding philosophies? Like I know Steve Wynn, I can't remember the exact statement, but he says like if you make people feel good, they'll, something like
Open their wallets, whatever.
Yeah, something along those
Absolutely.
lines. But is that, you mentioned you see it through the eyes of the instructor and make them feel good, but it also sounds as though you're also, of any person in there, they're also feeling good.
Oh, absolutely. And it's little things like, hey girl, what's up? Versus, and to this point, teachers do not call their students sir or doctor. Students call their teacher. So why would instructor, yes ma'am, can I help you with that? And I get it, if you're 20, anyone over 40 looks ancient, but I've had clients call me and say, I'm opening a studio because they keep calling me this. So just like Dr. Sir, who's a doctor? Is it a PhD? Is it a dentist? I don't know. Why does he get a doctor? I don't. Who cares? So let's call everybody by their first name. And if you don't know their first name, shame on you. How hard is it for the front desk to print out, I know they're coming. I know what they like. I know your children. One of the things also that we do when we design these studios, every Wednesday we feed the crew. Every Wednesday, whoever's on the construction site, lunch is served. And that comes from way back, something I feel special about. The painter's children. The audacity of someone to build something and not even know the GC's name. And so every Wednesday, we bring food, pizza, whatever, and so that's all over the world. And that's one of, if you're gonna work with me, then we take care of people that take care of you. And guess what? They won't be coming back to put an extra screw in. And so when you respect the people at the bottom, and that's what most fitness people don't. So, when we built the studio in Brunei, Bangladeshians did the project. Phenomenal. They read every single detail. And speaking of reading, one of our tricks also is that we go and have everyone's eyes checked. Majority of people can't see. And so if you're looking at floor plans and something doesn't turn out right, it's because most people don't have reading glasses. And so what we do is blow them up massive size, and then we load up everyone and say, we're gonna go get your eyes checked. The maintenance crew, if things are dirty, it's not their fault. How many of them can actually see? How many can actually read? And I've learned this, again, very humble, is that not everyone can read. How dare we impose these? You didn't clean this, I'm gonna, they get their eyes checked? And so when you get complaints about, oh, this club, this gym, this studio, this whatever is dirty, well, that's management's problem because they didn't take care of their people. And so that's where the level that we go to. And as I said, we've been on our hands and knees in the middle of the night, sweeping floors. I mean, there's nothing that we won't do. And so we start at the bottom and we just make it a full kind of 1,000-piece puzzle, and every piece goes together. It's really hard to fail.
I guess you can't take many of those on. Like the amount of detail that you sound as though you go into is incredible. I've never heard. I'm sure there maybe there's examples, but I've never heard of anything like that. Have you?
No, not to this point.
We're just obsessed, It's just a calling of sorts. But and so we take again. We have a, it's like juggling. Some projects take 2 to 3 years, others take 6 months. It just kind of depends. So we're always moving around, but we're very selective, and it's not the price. It's just, are you good people? Are you going to help somebody? Philanthropy is the number one thing we ask. Who are you going to serve? And if it's me, then you're not our client. Profit is important, but purpose and passion are first. And sometimes I'll get calls once in a while and it's like, hey, what do we make? And I mean, go get a franchise if that's all you care about. So, but anyway, we're open to any location, any size. We're starting to work a little bit into the hotel space, into some wellness, which is kind of exciting. So my team has come from restaurant and hospitality industry, so they're dipping back into their previous experience and going into the spa world is really exciting. And as I said, we all take massages, and now we're understanding the ceiling. This is not good. I see the stains up here. Who did this? Somebody who never had a facial, right? Or you flip over. So all those tiny little details, and it's the experience. And to answer the first question, when they leave your space, it's how you made them feel. They don't remember the fitness. They remember the experience. Did she know my name? Did he remember, that my daughter is sick? And if the front desk is too busy on their phone that they can't print out the next, it's like 30 people, how hard is it? Then you've got the wrong staff. Bartenders make great fitness people, by the way. They're on it. They can remember this, anticipating. So anyway, but yeah, I think the things that make a studio successful is, again, hustle, creativity. You don't need an education. You don't need money. And that's what most people don't want to give. They want to do it the easy way, and then they wonder why classes once full are now half empty.
Right.
New, improved, improving. If it can't keep getting better, then it's the same.
I guess you wouldn't want to go up against one of your studios, put it that way.
No, absolutely.
I don't know, but they're joyful, as I said. We just get such joy when we hear good news. And
do you deal in all the senses, or are you finding that as you step into spa, the smell, the sound? I mean, and how do you deal with sound? That's like the number one complaint that most studios
the
get.
sound. Well, we can isolate 100 decibels. Right. The Turn studio in Atlanta, the mayor is above the office, is right above the cycling studio.
Right.
So the most expensive things in a studio are what people don't want to pay for, and that's sound mitigation, plumbing, HVAC. If you have sweaty, you can't flip the classes over, it shorts out the electronics, and then they wonder why their microphones are going out. As far as the sound goes, yes, we are very, very careful about the way everything is built. Sound travels, by the way, through pipes, not through walls necessarily. Right. It's going to travel through outlets and shared spaces. But that is probably the most essential, is having a perfectly, a box within a box.
Box in a box, yeah.
And typically, just going to Home Depot and getting green glue, that's not going to work. No. But if you're shut down because of sound problems and you have business neighbors, then you've lost the momentum. Yeah. You've got to shut down. And by the way, once in a while we'll get calls, and can you help me? I'm like, well, we could have. But it's late in the game right now. And that's what people don't understand, is that when you're looking for a location, and that's a whole other topic, sound and lighting, but we like to help them find the location, because sometimes a space that's more per square foot is actually cheaper to build out.
Right.
And so you'd be amazed, sound complaints from kennels, dog places.
Dog kennels, yeah.
Their frequency. The dogs bark all night long because they can hear it. And so apartments above is not a problem. We're pretty good at this, but we've had 20 years to practice.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, yeah.
What about scent?
Scent, so scent goes with your brand. So in the beginning, again, you sign a contract and I give you this homework. There's an action list, 200 items that you need to be doing before you ever find a location. And so your scent goes with your brand. And so once we understand inspirational, competitive, rebellious, and we can talk more about that, we put you in the category. One of the first things we do, and a lot of it is, it's not busy work, but we need to keep them interested, right? So we send them multiple samples of essential oils and scent marketing. If it's going to go through the HVAC, we need to know that up front. And their homework, and with towels, is to practice making chilled towels. Have your children do it, it doesn't matter, for about 3 months, and understand which towel is going to keep the scent, which was not, and then explore it. The thing about scent, though, is that you're desensitized to it. And so we like to put it in the HVAC so it just comes out soft. If you walk in and smell it, it's too much. It should be so subtle that you don't know why it smells good. If you can smell it, you've lost it.
You're an Abercrombie.
Yeah, spray and breathe. And so, again, it's but that's part of the experience. And just like the sound tracks, your house music, as I call it, that goes with your brand. Think about a restaurant. You don't have classic rock and roll in a sushi. So you walk in and suddenly the music, or no music at all. What could be worse? Who are you? So we like for them to establish their 3 channels. And the house music, the front of the house, is not what you play, obviously. And so all of that goes into those early stages of homework. Who are you? What are you? And why are these channels only allowed? Because if you don't keep up with it, you're going to walk in one day and suddenly there's some really filthy music, and you lost control. And that's when people leave gradually. So whatever you do on day one, it must be consistent. Your change comes through creativity. You don't change the way you do business. Your hello speech, your ending speech, whatever happens, fans on after 3 songs, fans off before the 4th song ends, whatever it is, that formula doesn't change. Just like flying. Buckle your seatbelts. The structure does not change. The creativity comes when we've got 3 instructors on stage, on podium. We call it stage because contractors don't know what a podium is. They think it's a lectern, right? They're so confused. So anyway, but the scent is important as long as people don't know it's there. Now, if you're doing the chilled towels, it's kind of a marketing perk because pumpkin pie, spice, I don't know. But you have to be careful because there's a lot of allergies and things. So. It's in the HVAC. That was a nice way to have it smell clean. We've also used some UVC fans. Bellingham, Washington was one of our first there. It was called Ride Culture. Such a beautiful studio. And we used the haiku fans. So in between classes, they've got the UVC. And this was prior to COVID, but they also own a restaurant next to it. And so we just really wanted to keep things super clean. And so that was important to do as well. But
well, look, I think we've got to.
Oh my goodness, we're sitting here going, we're going to lift our game.
Cut all this, grab what you want.
Well, look, thanks. So just for people who do want to kind of, what's the secret handshake?
They can't get hold of her. She's not going to Google them.
I'm not going to Google. Just drop a request, info@BarbaraChancey Design, and within 24 hours.
Maybe
someone will get back to you.
No, that's my rule. Your time, I respect. You had enough time to fill out the request for information. I will call you within 12 hours. You will get a response from me, and then it's the game on. So you
fantastic.
Yeah. But
well,
thank
thanks.
you so much.
No, that was great.
Amazing.
It was. We could have spoken all night.
I appreciate you all.
But we don't want to give away all your secrets, though.
No,
so.
she didn't. I think she was holding back.
Not at all. But you guys have been influential. I can't thank you and Escape enough, and all that you do at Good Soul Hunting. So it's a team, and that's the thing. It takes a team to make the future. So thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Barbara.
you.
All right.
Good to see you.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Oh.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you did, then please go over to iTunes and subscribe to the Escape Your Limits podcast. Leave a review, leave a comment. It really would help us a lot to continue to keep these going.